If you believe in protecting East Texas and the rural environment that we live in, well, then you need to pay attention to what's happening in East Texas right now. It's time for some straight talk. I'm Bunker Bob Steinhagen, and this is the Bunker Bob Show. Yes, and good afternoon, and welcome again to another edition of the Bunker Bob Show. And today I have a special guest, Travis Ransom, the mayor of Atlanta, Texas. Not Georgia, Texas. How are you, Travis?
I'm doing great. It's the second largest Atlanta in the nation.
That's a great point. Yeah, you've got, what, 6,000?
About 6,000 residents.
Yeah, it's just like Atlanta, Georgia, only different, yes. Except it's right here in Texas.
That's right.
It's part of our East Texas conservative community. We love our rural environment.
We're low on taxes and high on liberty.
And low and small on or big on limited government.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes.
And you are the mayor of Atlanta. I don't know why anyone would want to be a mayor of anything.
Well, it pays $100 a month. I mean,
well, that was more than I got paid, so that's pretty good.
I just don't know where it all goes.
I don't either. That's pretty amazing. Yeah. But, we're here to talk about a very serious issue. But before we do, I just want to give people a chance to get to know you a little bit. And I first got to know you at the decision of who was going to replace John Ratcliffe for Congress. And actually, you were one of the favorites of that race. So You are a conservative. You're a military guy. You've served in Afghanistan. We were talking about that a little bit before the show. But tell us, that's some nuts and bolts, but you're also a family man. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Grew up in Northeast Texas. Out of high school, I joined the Army Reserve to be a counterintelligence agent. I've been in the Army Reserve now 24 years. I'm a command sergeant major, which is the highest enlisted rank. And I just recently got back from Afghanistan, where I was the battalion command sergeant major of the last expeditionary military intelligence battalion on the ground there as we shut down America's longest war. Been mayor for 5 years, and I previously worked in the state legislature for 11 years for Texas State Senator Kevin Eltife, who was a former mayor of Tyler.
Okay.
And then who was, of course, now Brian Hughes is our Texas State Senator. For
the great Brian Hughes.
You bet, absolutely.
Man.
Good friend of mine, and worked with us when he was in the House, when we were in the Senate. And so background in state legislation. What pays the bills is a commercial insurance agent. So I sell insurance to small businesses. So I work with a lot of small business owners, and it's been a struggle over the last couple of years as we've dealt with this COVID craziness, and so it's been a tumultuous couple of years with this U.S. congressional race, COVID, and then a deployment to Afghanistan. Life's so easy.
Wow. We were I had Congressman Fallon on. We were talking a little bit about Afghanistan and the pullout. You have a unique perspective on this issue because you served in Afghanistan fairly recently. So what do you think about the pullout?
Yeah. So there's a lot of different ways to look at it. We had essentially speed is our friend. If you signal to the enemy that you're going to leave, you need to leave fast. And that was the strategy, was to get the heck out of there as soon as possible. And so there's a misconception that we just left a lot of equipment on the ground there. Well, we did. We turned over a lot of that equipment to the Afghan National Army. Our partners at the time, who swiftly collapsed as we left. Unfortunately, you saw what's called the NEO operation, the non-combatant evacuation operation that the Marines run. You saw that really fail big time because the government failed big time and collapsed. But what and Congressman Fallon, of course, he serves on the House Armed Services Committee. He's in the right spot, right where he needs to be to get informed on these issues, and he did a great job answering questions about the pullout. He mentioned in his talk that the fighting is seasonal there, and that's true, except that we had a very mild winter last winter, and like I said before the show, we had over 100 attacks a night the entire time I was there, and 40 to 45 people killed every night, not U.S. people, but Afghan National Army, Afghan Defense Forces, either against patrols and ops, against checkpoints, against targeted killing of political leaders or journalists, just targets of opportunity. IEDs, suicide bombers. I mean, they were constantly attacking. There's this perpetual violence. There was never a reduction in violence. As we talked about a conditions-based withdrawal, there was never those conditions of reduction in violence. There was a reduction in violence on U.S. forces. They were very specific about not targeting U.S. forces or face huge consequences. But anyway, it's a terrible situation. It's a tough road ahead. I'm glad that I got out, and I'm glad all my people got out safely. And but the people of Afghanistan, you know, they need a lot of prayer, and they're going to need a lot of support going forward. My soldiers are struggling with the investment that they put into that country. Yeah. Some of my soldiers have been over there for years. You know, they spent 4 years, and when you're 25 years old, 4 years is a long part of your life.
Boy,
you know?
It sure is.
And so, and a lot of my soldiers are 24 years old, because I've been in the Army 24 years, and I thought that was a really interesting number. I had, like, these young soldiers that were just in their 20s.
Wow.
But you know, for the 20 years we were there, where people were able to participate in their form of government, they were able to vote, the women were able to get educated, we made an invaluable difference in their lives. And my hope is that those people that we impacted over those years will stand up and be the future for Afghanistan down the road. But they've got a very rough road ahead of them. Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you for your service. First of all, you also I don't want to miss the fact that you are married and you have
married. Married. My wife almost 19 years. It'll be 19 years this year.
Congratulations.
And kiddos. I've got a son who's in college out at University of Texas at Arlington, and I've got then a 10-year gap, and then daughters who are in Atlanta schools, who run cross country, who play soccer, who do ballet. I mean, it's just it's a whirlwind of activity.
You got a 13-year-old girl?
Yes,
I do too. So we're
girl,
so we're both in the middle of that. Yeah.
And she and believe it or not, she outruns me.
Wow.
Yeah, she's on the cross country team.
My daughter is too.
Yeah, she came in second in district.
Oh my goodness.
She runs like I want to say her time was like 14 flat or 13:50
wow.
2 mile.
Okay.
So pretty quick.
You know, we talked a little bit beforehand that it was kind of may have been a blessing that you weren't selected as congressman with these young kids.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, I told you I'm running for county judge now.
Yes, you are.
It's an open seat.
In Cass County.
Gratuitous plug, for that. But running for Cass County judge. Yeah. But the cool thing about that is that I get to stay home and still make an impact on my community, and that's really that's what drives me. Getting to do essential, or I would say what I'd call meaningful work. I think I'm infected with meaningful work syndrome. And so doing meaningful work and then coming back to the private sector sometimes can be a little deflating. And that's when you see Army guys have a real hard time transitioning, because they were making life and death decisions weeks before, and now they're in an insurance office selling insurance. And I'm not saying that insurance isn't meaningful. It's pretty meaningful if you've got a claim that's catastrophic. But it's sometimes good to scratch that itch. And so being the mayor, getting to improve my community, serve others, that's been able to scratch that itch at home. And then being the county judge is just the same. The opportunity was there, and where the judge was not running again, so it's an open seat. So I'm looking forward to running for that. And really just being the rural voice for Cass County, because the rural voice, as we've talked about with redistricting, it's shrinking. As the urban growth and redistricting happens, we have less representation for our large landowners and our rural people. We just don't have the representation we used to have. That's not a knock on anyone who's currently serving. That's just the truth of the matter.
That's the reality of that's the reality of. And so you're going to be moving out of Pat Fallon's district into a guy that I consider to be the greatest congressman, living congressman in office today. That's Louis Gohmert.
Yeah.
So
we're sneaking into Louis' district. Yes.
Boy, yeah,
and he's great. In fact, I was on my way out of the country for a deployment in 2009, and Louis was in office at the time, and he gave me the best tour of the Capitol. Spent time with me, made me feel at home with his staff, introduced me to all his staff. Just a real stand-up guy. So he's a great East Texas guy. So we're very fortunate in Northeast Texas. But yes, Cass County will go to Congressman Gohmert's district, Congressional District 1. I think that most of Bowie County will also be in his district, with the exception of Red River Army Depot, which is a It's a amendment to the bill by Van Dever to put Red River Army Depot into Pat Fallon's district because he's on the House Armed Services Committee. And that's Red River Army Depot is critical for Northeast Texas. It's the largest employer between Texarkana and Dallas.
Oh, wow.
It's over 5,000 employees at Red River Army Depot, and that's a huge deal. And depot level maintenance of our Humvees, our LMTVs, light wheeled tactical vehicles, those things. I mean, it's critical for our warfighting capabilities, but also they used to make grenades out there. I mean, you think about what happens if we don't get things made in the USA and they don't agree with our war?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a pretty bad deal. So we want to make sure we keep Red River Army Depot. So,
like anyway. Oscar Schindler says, if we ever make something that actually works, then I'll be upset. So we definitely don't want to be on that side. That's a good point. And those of us in Rockwall County, we are staying in Pat Fallon's district. We're also staying in Bob Hall's district.
That's right.
The only problem is Hall's district has kind of really gotten.
It's convoluted.
It is very convoluted.
Yeah.
So, but the good news is we still have Bob Hall. Who's your state senator?
It's Brian Hughes.
You're going to keep Brian Hughes.
I'll keep Brian Hughes.
Okay. Oh, man, another good one.
I know. Yeah.
All right.
So we're in pretty good shape.
All right. Well, good. Well, you said it's important because to be county judge because you're making an impact on your community. And boy, what an impact Marvin Nichols is about to have on your community if it moves forward. Let's talk about the fact that I think it's not a surprise to most people. I think it was the T. Boone Pickens, the big oil and gas guy. He actually got out of natural gas. That was his thing. He got out of natural gas toward the end of his life, and he got into
groundwater.
Water. That's right. And that's now the place to be investing.
Water's a new oil.
It is.
Absolutely.
And so what's happening is a lot of private land is being scooped up for that purpose.
Absolutely. So what you've got is you have Texas Water Development Board in 1997 under Bob Bullock created this water development board, this regional water planning process where Region C represents these counties out in Dallas, Fort Worth area. Region D is Northeast Texas, and each region across the state comes up with their 50-year water plan. Every 5 years, they renew their plan. They submit it to the Texas Water Development Board. The Texas Water Development Board meshes these together, and then that becomes the state water plan. And so what has happened is Region D, recognizing that the Marvin Nichols Reservoir is going to be of significant detriment to the economy and the livelihood and private property rights of the people in Region D, has removed the Marvin Nichols Reservoir from our regional water plan. Region C just said, great, and they put it in theirs. Well, it's the equivalent to me of putting a swimming pool in my neighbor's yard because I don't want it in my yard. Because it's physically located in Region D, but they've left it in the Region C water plan. And in this most recent iteration, they've bumped the time frame up. So they've sped up the time frame. In July of 2021, they put it back in the Region C water plan and sped the time frame up. So it's of critical importance now. And unfortunately, the Texas Water Development Board don't recognize that as a conflict because their definition of conflict is if two regions want to utilize the allocation of water resources of the same project. And since C is the only entity that wants Marvin Nichols and D doesn't want it, then there's no conflict because D doesn't want the water resources from that potential project. So you have two different regions with conflicting plans, but the Water Development Board only sees a conflict if two regions want the water volume from the same project. So we're saying, no, undesignate this as a reservoir project.
Okay.
You see, if private property rights matter, and our Republican Party platform
it
spells it out pretty clear.
That's right.
So our Republican Party platform, which property is mentioned 37 times in our platform. And,
awesome.
And some of that's about property tax, but a lot of it is about property rights. But if property rights are important, it's unconscionable to have Republican leadership allow this to happen. What this is 66,000 acres in Northeast Texas, potentially, maybe 72. There's different maps that have different estimates on the number of acreage flooded. So that's taken out of the tax base. So where do the local schools get their funding if they don't have 66,000 acres of property tax? Where do the counties get their money for road and bridge if they don't have 66,000 acres of property tax? Cities don't, that's out of the local tax base. That's out of the hands of local landowners who don't want to get rid of this land, don't want the land to be flooded, not to mention the natural habitat that's flooded, bottomland, hardwood, flooded land. And then on top of that, for every acre you flood, you have to set aside in perpetuity mitigated acreage. So if I flood an acre, I have to set aside a like kind acre. And if a like kind acre is not available, the multiplier could be 3. I may have to set aside 1 to 3 or 1 to 6 or 1 to 4 or 1 to 1.
What do you mean by that?
So every time we dissolve an acre, we flood an acre, the federal government says that we have to mitigate or put a set aside there. So it's
But how do you do that?
well, you capture even more land. So you're talking about, instead of a 66,000 acre floodplain, you're talking about 66,000 acres flooded and another 130,000 acres set aside in perpetuity for mitigation.
And that is not privately held, that's publicly held land.
So I can't develop it, I can't harvest timber on it, I can't plant trees on it, I can't build a house on it, you've locked me up. I can't do anything. Well, already they've designated this land as a reservoir site without any compensation to the landowners. So they're holding the landowners hostage. Because if I own land in the floodplain, do you think I can sell that land? Can I develop it? Can I build a hotel on that land? Can I build a farm or a ranch? No, I can't sell it. It's encumbered by this designation, which is not a I've not been compensated for that. It's like buying a wrecked car with a Carfax report. I've got diminished value now because you've blighted my title to that property. You've blighted the property.
So are you talking about adjoining property?
So
to that, or are you talking about that which is inside that?
That which is inside the floodplain has been designated future reservoir project. So and landowners have no compensation for that.
All right, so it's already in a floodplain?
Yeah, well, it's already designated potential future reservoir site.
Okay, so it's not necessarily in a floodplain.
Not necessarily in a floodplain. No.
But they're because it's designated as a future reservoir site, it is considered a floodplain.
Well, it's considered a designated reservoir site, whatever that weird designation is.
So you really can't sell the property because people understand that the state's going to take it away.
Right.
So the people who own that property are already screwed.
They're already stuck.
Yeah,
they're already stuck.
Wow.
And so if you're a timber farmer, a timber guy, and you want to plant timber out there, you don't have any idea if you're going to get a return on investment. If they're going to flood it in 15 years, you're not going to get a return on investment.
Wow.
Your timber company, why would you replant? We'll just clear cut it and dig a hole. Let's start selling dirt if they're going to build it.
So help us put our minds around it.
Yeah.
Are you looking at Lake Ray Hubbard, for instance?
Sure.
Compare Lake Ray Hubbard to what they're proposing.
So I honestly don't know the size of Lake Ray Hubbard.
Okay.
But if you look at the maps on the Texas Water Development Board site, the flooded area, the lake footprint, is larger than most in East Texas. It is a giant lake.
Okay.
And it's a very shallow lake because
really,
there's not a whole lot of mountains or hills out there. I mean, East Texas is not that. I mean, it's hilly, but it's not that. It's not like Arkansas. Where you dam up a mountain pass and suddenly you've got this deep reservoir.
Okay.
This is a very shallow, very long, low and flat reservoir.
Are they going to dig?
I mean,
because I think that's what they do with Lake Ray Hubbard. They dug.
They probably dredge some, and you have to dredge some just to keep up with siltation. You have to, but that's again, it's diminishing returns. I mean, how much can you feasibly dig when you don't? Honestly, the bottom line is you don't need it.
Right.
They don't need it.
Okay.
Let's
talk about that.
We've shown through conservation.
Okay.
Through reuse, through reduction, and through existing water supplies. Lake Wright-Patman, for example. It's kept currently at one level, but it can be risen to what's called the ultimate rule curve, which is a taller, raise the level of that lake and manage it as a higher level. When you do that, you create new water rights. So Riverbend Water Resources District, and the district that we created in the state legislature when I worked for Senator Eltife, has applied on behalf of the city of Texarkana for those new water rights. Those, plus some other lakes in the vicinity of the DFW area that they already are using, raising the existing level of the lakes, plus reduction, reuse, and conservation, that is enough water to provide for the Dallas-Fort Worth area for the next 50 years.
Well, and I think that's the key, because what's interesting is this lake is really not there to provide water to East Texas. No. It's there to provide water to Dallas, now, to big Dallas. Yeah, show us this. This is interesting.
I'll tell you this. So what I've told other folks is Dallas-Fort Worth wants to take land through eminent domain.
Yes.
They want to flood it by the acre foot, which is 1 acre of land with 1 foot of water across an acre. That's how they measure water on the wholesale. They want to take it, but it's a great business plan if they can turn around and sell it back to you by the bottle. This bottle was bought in Atlanta, Texas at my local grocery store.
Okay.
And it was bottled in Fort Worth. This bottle was bought at Buc-ee's in Royce City, and it's got a fancier bottle, and it's more expensive, but it also was bottled in Fort Worth.
Wow.
So, you know, there's...
So basically, they're taking water from
landowners.
Yes.
Yeah, they're taking
water. And in Fort Worth, they're selling it from Fort Worth.
They're bottling it, yes.
Yeah.
Miller Brewing Company is one of the largest water users in the DFW Metroplex.
Okay.
So they're making beer. That's great.
Yeah.
You know, there's lots of breweries in the Metroplex. They could be in Northeast Texas. That's economic development. That's great. I'm all for breweries or bottled water. That's fine. But this is the first time, well, maybe not the first time, but this is an odd occasion. Normally, civilization moves where water is.
Yes.
Now we're moving water to civilization.
Yes, that's true.
You're talking about pumping hundreds of thousands of gallons of water through a potential pipeline 150 miles uphill west, which is just silly. The energy costs alone are insane. The cost of building this project is over $4.4 billion.
$4.4 billion.
It's insane.
Wow.
But it's a money grab. When you sell it back at $2 a bottle,
yeah,
that's a hell of a deal.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's a great business plan, but it's a terrible thing for private property rights. So the Republican Party has to decide if private property rights are important, and they've spelled it out. You know, they say.
We have said.
Yeah,
I was on the platform committee.
We say that. So, you know, including the regulatory taking of property by governmental agencies, that they recognize property use. They recognize, you know, flooding mitigation and things. All the right words are in the platform.
Right.
If we'll follow our own doctrine,
right,
which I'm a big guy on doctrine. As a command sergeant major, hey, I always point back to policy or doctrine.
Love it.
That's why we write it down.
Right.
So we have rules.
Yeah.
It's in the platform.
Yeah.
And if you're not a Republican, I'm sorry, but if you're a Democrat, guess what? We support rural values of self-reliance and devotion to God and country, preservation of private property rights. It's in the Democrat Party platform, too, shockingly.
Wow, that is shocking. I will say that.
I had to print both because I thought you'd think it was interesting. And I'll be the first guy to quote the Democrat Party platform on your show.
It is. This is true, but it is interesting.
Please don't call me a rhino.
I don't.
I just want to tell you.
Absolutely not.
But yeah, I mean, they talk about reforming eminent domain statutes to be more fairly balanced and to balance the right of property owners with industry, eliminating property entities, having blanket condemnation authority. Well, that's what this is.
Yep.
It's blanket condemnation authority so that they can bottle water and sell it.
Wow.
There are over 18 water parks in DFW.
Wow.
They're building a new water park in Rowlett right now that is amazing. The internet, you can look it up on the internet. It's a phenomenal water park.
Yeah.
I have no idea how many thousands, hundreds of thousands of gallons of water that these water parks will be using.
Right.
But these are just mechanisms to use more water. I mean, I'm glad for the citizens of Dallas, but what I'm saying is that they don't take it seriously. Their value of their water is devalued. They're not paying enough for their water because they don't value their water. When they turn the tap on, clean water comes out. And until it doesn't, I don't think we're going to get their attention. It's very frustrating because this is a real threat to private property. And, and folks in Rockwall may think, oh, well, what does this matter to me? Well, it matters just because we're setting precedents.
Right, absolutely.
If they'll take their land in East Texas, they'll do it here.
Absolutely. What's interesting is we were talking a little bit about the lines and how we're losing seats in rural areas, which is where the conservative strongholds are. Right. All of the major cities are primarily Democrat. Dallas, Houston, Austin. So when you take, I mean, they are literally taking more land away. So what's the timeline?
Every 5 years, they pass a state water plan, and then we argue about it for 5 years, and we start again. So, you know, it's a moving needle. Now, I'll tell you, I got into this because I worked for the state senator, and I was going to these meetings. I went to the Region C and Region D Water Development Board meetings. I went to the Sulphur River Basin Authority meetings. I went to the River Bend Water Resources District meetings. I went to, I'm leaving one entity out, I know, Texas Water Development Board meetings. All these meetings and to review all these studies. And I mean, if you're not part of the solution and you're not part of the problem, apparently there's good money in being a consultant, just postponing the problem forever.
Yeah.
That's the way this water, nothing moves fast in the water world. And so, and then you just got to stay engaged. The problem is I've been the youngest guy in those meetings for the last 20 years. And, you know, what guys like Red Birdsong, who have passed away, who was a landowner in the floodplain, David Neighbors from Lamar County, who is a great advocate against the reservoir and is one of the smartest guys on water in East Texas. David Neighbors, he's got an artificial leg, and he walked his tail off around the state capitol advocating on behalf of landowners while I was in the legislature. And these guys have a compelling story. Max Shoemaker, retired National Guard, one-star general, another landowner in the affected area. He's another guy who's walked his boots off, in the Texas Capitol, advocating on behalf of private property rights in Texas. Yeah. And those stories, their stories just compelled me, and I did what I could for them while I was in the legislative staff, to keep them informed and share information and work with them and try to get them to the table with people. But the truth is, as we go, a lot of these guys who have been engaged in the fight for a long time are aging out, and we need younger folks to step in. That's one of the reasons we've created this preservenortheasttexas.org is our website, preservenortheasttexas.org. We've created this website to kind of organize and energize the population so that we'll know, they're kept informed and they can sign a petition. We're trying to get a lot of signatures on a petition to demonstrate organized opposition to this Marvin Nichols Reservoir, this violation of private property rights of Texans.
So how can you stop it? Can this be stopped?
I think so.
Okay.
I just don't know how. I don't know how unless the state legislature undesignates this as a potential future reservoir site. And I don't know how that works. It'll have to be legislatively.
Okay.
Even if Region C won't take it out of their plan, but they should. But they have to be shown how we can provide them the water they say they need for the next 50 years without that. And I think that can be shown. But what happens is they juke the stats, figures don't lie, but liars sure can figure. And so they juke the stats. These studies are created it's hard to get ground truth.
Yeah.
You have all these facts and figures from all these projections, all these engineers, these hydrologists and things, and you don't know what's real. It's a projection.
Yeah.
You don't know what the future Dallas water needs are going to be.
Right.
I mean, how could we?
Right.
But I'll tell you, if you go to DFW through the airport, they don't have waterless urinals. If I go to Arizona and I'm in Tucson, there's no water in the urinals. They're waterless urinals. If we start acting like we have a water shortage, we start charging people what water is actually worth, I think we'll see a huge reduction in water usage in DFW. But right now, your water bills are too low. In Dallas-Fort Worth, your water bills are too low, and you're using too much. Technology, I think, technology is going, and through innovation, we're going to solve this problem if we can continue to tell our story, and if we'll stick to our principles of private property rights. We just won't trample the rights, but no one's talking about this. Water plant. So technology, I think, technology is going, and through innovation, we're going to solve this problem if we can continue to tell our story, and if we'll stick to our principles of private property rights. We just won't trample the rights, but no one's talking about this.
It is interesting that we're talking conservation.
I'm going to drink some of this Fort Worth water.
Yeah, why not? Hey, you're paying for it.
Yeah.
It is interesting that we're talking conservation because a lot of people look at Republicans not as the conservation party, but in fact, it was Teddy Roosevelt who was the ultimate conservationist.
You bet.
And
look at any of your manufacturing facilities. Lean Six Sigma is a big deal, right? Leaning out, making sure that everything is as highly efficient as. But that's conservation,
right?
What we're asking is for our public entities to be responsive and do the same thing. We're just asking for them to Lean Six Sigma their water treatment and their water infrastructure.
Yeah.
In Atlanta, my little municipal water area, we have too much leaks. We have too many leaks. Okay, especially after the winter storms last year, they devastated us. They broke pipes. We're working to fix those leaks and shore up our water system now. But years ago, the city of Dallas, there was a study that was published. They were leaking 100 gallons of treated water per connection per day.
Wow.
Was their rate of leak.
Wow.
So you fix existing infrastructure with innovative new technology. You put smart meters on houses. You ensure that you're accounting for the water. You have so much water flowing into your tower. You have so much water flowing out, and you're billing for. And the numbers should be pretty close. It's like balancing a checkbook. And if it's not, you got leakage. Well, you report that to the state. So the state has those figures. So I would say they just need to tighten up and lean Six Sigma their operation, just like we're trying to do in the city of Atlanta. But they have a whole lot more resources than we do. I cover more area with less people. They have a lot of people in a smaller area. So they've got the tax base to do it if they're charging appropriately for their water.
So let me ask the $64,000 question is,
Sure.
If Marvin Nichols moves forward, will water prices go down?
So I don't think so.
Okay.
I think it's a red herring, honestly.
All right.
Okay.
Talk about that.
Well, so water prices, $4.4 billion has to be paid for, right?
Okay,
So this
yeah.
dam, the pipeline, the energy to run water uphill, 150 miles through a pipeline, the buying of the right-of-way to put the pipeline in. Oh, hey, by the way, there were 2 natural gas pipelines that just came through Northeast Texas about 6 years ago, and I think they run right through the floodplain. So what are you going to do with those? You've got to dig those up, weight them, bury them again, otherwise they rupture and float. So there's untapped oil wells in the floodplain that you have to map and plug. There are so many unresolved issues with that particular reservoir site that I can't fathom the price tag of what the real, $4.4 billion is a shot in the dark. The real contingency, good God knows what that is.
Yeah.
How much money is actually going to cost? Who knows? So no, I don't think that's a possibility. The other argument for this is they'll say, well, one, we need it, okay?
Right.
I don't think that they do.
Right.
They want it. They want to own it. We've shown how we can get it without them owning it. They don't want to buy it. They want to take it.
Exactly.
So, two is this idea that there is going to be economic development around the lake. Well, Rockwall has a wonderful lake, and it has taken a long time, but there's wonderful economic development around that lake. That's great. But look at Lake Cooper. Does Lake Cooper have any of that up in Delta County? No
idea.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
And when Dallas needs water, they don't drain it out of their high-end lakefront property in Dallas. They drain it out of Lake Cooper.
Yeah.
And they have a big mud beach at Lake Cooper.
Wow.
And so those are the reservoirs they suck dry first, because they're preserving the property taxpayers in their district, in their region.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine it being any different if we did the same thing here. If we built houses around this lake, there's tons of lakes in Northeast Texas. We could build houses around. Nobody's building houses around. Some of them are core lakes where you're not allowed to, and I get that. This would not be a core lake. But that's another thing I think is a misconception that, we build this lake, suddenly houses will just pop up in East Texas. There'll be $1 million mansions around this lake.
Right.
I don't think so.
Yeah. I think that when they talk necessity, and of course, I've got William Pitt's quote about necessity is, is a plea for every infringement of human freedom, and is the argument of tyrants, it is the creed of slaves. So
absolutely.
When we talk about necessity, I think that where that's coming from is we're seeing this vast influx of Californians, of people from the East Coast. Their values are completely different than rural East Texas values, and those of us who live in Rockwall and who have a conservative mindset altogether. I think that this influx is creating the momentum, I guess, for this Marvin Nichols to move forward. Don't you think?
Well, it certainly is a contributing factor.
Yeah.
Yes, people are moving here in droves, especially from California.
Yeah.
We've just seen we're the only state that after the census we're gaining 2 congressmen.
Gaining 2 congressmen. That's right.
So we're the only state that's gaining 2 congressmen, and that's great because we'll get 2 more electoral votes. So that's fantastic. But a lot of the folks that are moving here from California, they have a very different view. They don't have the Texas mentality of property rights. They don't see their home, the castle law doctrine. You think about those things that we as Texans, we understand as core values and liberty, life, liberty, property, the pursuit of happiness, including the unborn. Those things which are in our party platform.
Yes.
Those are foreign concepts
Yeah, they are.
in a lot of places in America, sadly, and especially in California. It's so it is troubling. We have had, I almost want a do-over of the census. The census, I'm sure, is going to come back and say that Little Atlanta, Texas, has shrunk in size. Well, enrollment is up in schools in our school district for the 6th year in a row now.
Okay.
We're up almost 200 students this year in our school district in Atlanta. I have more housing going in Atlanta, Texas than we've ever had before. More housing developments, being built, going in. People are moving there in droves. because COVID happened in the middle of the census.
Yeah.
People realized that it was chaos in the cities. You couldn't get toilet paper. You couldn't get food. You had potential riots. Look at Portland. I mean, so people are moving out of the urban sprawl, the urban areas, and they're finding that if they can work remotely with broadband internet,
Yes.
then they can live in Northeast Texas and have a lot better quality of life, have a lot lower cost of living, have the freedoms they enjoy. I mean, it's just a great it's a great place to live and raise a family. And so we've seen an influx of people. I almost want a do-over of the census because I feel like we've really grown in the last year more than we have in the last 10 years, probably.
Yeah, I think that's true of most. Rockwell could, Rockwell could certainly
definitely.
See that. Well, so preservenortheasttexas.org is the website. That's where you can sign a petition.
Yes.
What else can people do? Anything?
So stay informed, sign the petition. If you're find out which region you're in. Find out if you're in Region C or if you're in Region D. Go to those Region C planning meetings and speak up and say, hey, private property rights are important. I'd like to see more emphasis on reuse and reduction reduction and reuse than I would like to see more emphasis on that than on new reservoir sites, because land property ownership is important and private property rights are important. So that's what I would say. Find out what region you're in and do that. The Texas Water Development Board, they only have 2 currently serving board members at the state level. Normally, I think there are 3 board members. I think they're a board member down right now. But those board members, when they get all the regional water plans from the regions and go to mesh those into a statewide water plan, that will be a time also to speak up and speak out against this reservoir site. It's just the wrong thing for North Texas, honestly.
Yeah. Now, are you the leader of this group, or who is the leader? Is there a leader?
Not really.
Okay.
No, not really. It's a
true grassroots effort is what's going on
absolutely.
here.
Yeah, you've got. It's a hodgepodge of people. I think I'm maybe the most outspoken. I'm the only one that's elected, but it's a strange. Politics makes strange bedfellows.
That's
as
true.
They say.
Yes. Yeah.
But we have Janice Bezanson, who is the executive director over some kind of conservation alliance, and I should know that off the top of my head, but I just can't remember what it is. But she is absolutely a conservationist. And then you have the timber industry who are supporting this too. So you have conservationists and timber industry. Anytime you have those two working together, that's a pretty big indicator that this is the wrong thing to do.
Yeah.
And that's what we have. We have conservationists literally working with timber industry because the timber industry cares about the future of the perpetual. Timber is a renewable renewable resource. Yeah. In fact, I tell anybody who prints the little triangle on the paper to take that off. I can't stand the triangle. It's nonsense. Paper is a renewable industry. It's a renewable resource. Print all you want.
Yeah.
We'll make more.
That's true. Yeah. Well, Travis, Mayor Ransom, and
Thank
hopefully Judge Ransom soon.
Thank you. I hope so.
Yeah. So, do you have any opposition yet?
So one person has indicated that they are intending to run, but we'll see. The filing is not opened yet. I've made my treasurer's appointment and have announced, but certainly I think we should be in good shape. We've got a good track record. It's easy to talk and say you want to do something, but we've actually done it in Atlanta. So conservative policies work, and we've made it work in Atlanta.
They sure do. So. And, Mayor, anytime you want to come on this show to talk about issues, you're always welcome. Travis, you're one of those unique leaders, elected officials who actually stands by the conviction of your beliefs, and you actually follow through on that. And there's so few of you out there. I'm like, hey, whenever you want time on my show, you are more than welcome. So thanks for being here.
Thank you.
With
I appreciate
me
you having me. Yeah.
Well, if you are interested in helping what's going on in East Texas, preserveeasttexas.org is the place to go. So please, at the very least, sign up so that you can get notified on what's going on. It also has a Q&A on that website that answers a lot of the questions that you're probably interested in knowing. And so I would encourage you to get involved and get informed. So I appreciate Mayor Ransom, and I appreciate all of those of you in East Texas who are fighting for this. I want you to know that those of us conservatives, at least here in Rockwall County and the like, we're supporting you, and we're gonna jump in on this and help you in any way we can. So help us out, get involved, and I hope that we will see you next time. So don't forget, as Thomas Jefferson said, that when the people fear the government, there is tyranny. When the government fears the people, there's liberty. Let's be a liberty-loving state. Blessings to you all. We'll see you next time.